What's going on, everybody, and welcome. My name is Justinhickox. If you are new here, I appreciate for hanging out. And I want to talk about something today. Not only are we going to go through some Q&As, some live question and answers for you, we're also going to be talking about home hair. Yes, how to avoid all of the home hair mistakes that, let's be real, we all have made. And I'm going to share some tips with you that hopefully will make that a little bit easier for you. So again, if you're new to me, my name is Justinhickox, and this is kind of what I do. I've been doing hair for 25 years. I've owned my own salon for 20, and on my channel, I share tips, things to hopefully make your life a little, or at least your hair life, a little bit easier. So today, we are going to walk through some fun tips, and then I've already have some questions. I reached out to you guys on my community page. If you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe, and then check out my community page. I'll throw in some posts here and there and ask you guys questions so that we can kind of figure out what the best content for you is, so that I can really kind of make sure that I'm giving you guys value that, well, is important to you. So I did that, and you guys came up with some great questions, which I'm going to go through today, but I also want to give you a platform for you to ask questions right now so we can get some feedback. So before I dive into the questions, I want to jump ahead a little bit, and I want to talk about some hair concerns, some things that we see at home, some things that I see in the salon when people do their hair at home, and hopefully shed some light for you on how to not make these same mistakes. Now, the first one I want to address is simply not understanding the importance or the timing that you should have your hair wet, how wet it needs to be, when you should dry it, when you should cut it dry, the difference, and why that's so important. Here's what happens, and I'm not saying anything negative about everyone that goes on YouTube and shows home haircuts and tutorials. I think they're great. That's fantastic, and I'm definitely not here to bash on any of that. But what you need to take into consideration is paying attention to your own hair, your texture, all of that good stuff, and understanding that there is a difference between maybe your hair and just the person that's showing you that video or showing you this tutorial. So if you are going to do your own hair at home, if you're going to be cutting it, we want to make sure that if you have any wave in your hair at all, any curl in your hair, that you're hyper aware of making sure that you have the right moisture amount depending on the cut that you're trying to do. Now, what I mean by that is if you've got super dry hair and you cut it, it might work really well and it might work fantastic. Actually, might be the exact length that you're looking for. The concern, though, is that it's much harder to get a clean cut when your hair is dry. But what you want to know is that if you're going to wet it down and pull it out and start cutting it, is when you pull this out, the minute you let it cinch up or let it go, it's going to cinch up, right? But then again, once it goes from wet to dry, it's also going to cinch up a little bit. So you want to take that into consideration. So what I tell people is if you're talking about a specific length and your hair is wavy or curly, you want to get your hair dried like you naturally would and then look in the mirror and decide where do you want that length to come. And roughly, how much is that length off, right? So let's say you want it to come to here, and right now it's to here. Well, then maybe I'm going to take about this much length off. Then when you're combing it down, when it's wet, and you can actually get a nice clean comb on it, and you snip that, you want to make sure that you're snipping about that much length off. It's obviously not going to look like the length that you want to cut it to, and you're definitely not going to say, I want it to here, I'll comb it down and cut it to there, because if you do this, it's going to end up at your chin, right? So we don't want to do that. We want to be aware of it. So I would definitely say if you're going to be doing your hair and it's got wave in it and you're combing it out and you're cutting it, have it wet, because it's actually easier to get a clean comb in it, meaning it's a cleaner section, and it's all around a better practice. Just recognize that it's going to cinch up, so you want to pay attention to that. Now, this actually goes for straight hair textures as well. If you're going to have your hair straight, and even if you're going to flat iron it if it's wavy, right? You have it straight, you still want to wet it down for most cutting scenarios, unless you're going really short, like using clippers. You still want to wet it down because it's going to give you a much cleaner comb. And this is what I've always said, and this is what I learned in hair school. They always said in hair school, your haircut's only as clean as your sectioning. And what that's to say is, if you're combing it out, or you just grab a big section, you pull it down, and you cut it, Well, you're going to have random pieces in there that are random lengths, and that's not going to be a clean line. And therefore, your overall cut isn't going to be quite as precise as if you can get a comb and you actually comb it out nicely, and then you cut the ends. When you do that, you can see all the hair better, it makes more sense, and overall, it's just a better foundation for the overall cut. So one thing you want to pay attention to is, no matter what they're doing on the video, no matter what you're paying attention to, no matter what you're watching, make sure that for you, when you take that approach, that you wet your hair down, not dripping wet, out of the shower, towel blotted, and then apply that technique at that time when it's a little bit damp. And then just recognize that if your hair has any wave or curl, it's going to cinch up. So start thinking about the length that you want it to end up prior to jumping in the shower and wetting your hair down. All right? And this is why I've created, so if you already haven't jumped in and registered for the webinar that we're going to be doing on home hair. I'm doing an entire webinar, kind of masterclass, where I'm going to be breaking down a bunch of tips on home hair. We're talking about cutting. We're talking about color. We're really diving deep into it. And that is going to be, just got scheduled today, guys. I'm so excited to announce this. It just got scheduled. That is going to be July 1, okay, July 1st. We're going to do that webinar. So there is a link in the description of this video. Make sure you register for that if you have not already registered. It's going to be huge. I can't wait to share it with you guys. But yes, so do that. But that's why I'm creating this, because I want to dive a little deeper into this. Hey, everybody, how are you guys doing, by the way? Okay, so I'm going to jump to these comments, but I want to do them at the end so that I don't miss all of the stuff that I want to, the value that I want to share with you guys. So don't think I'm ignoring you. I promise I'm not. So the next thing is we want to pay attention to, especially when this goes to cut, into texture. What you see in the video that you're watching, the tutorial, if that person's texture is different than yours, it plays a huge role. This is something that in the salon we see all the time. People bring in photos, which if you've watched any of my videos, especially if you're watching the videos about how to find a new stylist, you know that I love photos. I'm a huge proponent of bringing a photo to your stylist. It says 1,000 words, right? But it's true. It says so much more than we can say by ourselves. But what we have to recognize is that if your texture is different than the one in the photo, even if, for instance, I cut the exact same haircut, it doesn't inherently mean that it's going to look the same on you. It's obviously going to look a little bit different. To show you an extreme example, imagine that you've got stick straight hair and you bring in a photo of Oprah Winfrey, which I've actually literally had. That scenario happened. It was amazing. And you're saying, hey, I don't want to do anything or style my hair. I don't want to spend any time on it. I just want it to look like this curly, beautiful hair, and mine's bored straight. We all know that's not going to happen. But what that's to say is pay attention to the texture of the person in the video. If, for instance, you've got very fine hair and they are doing something where they're taking a big section of it and they're snipping it all at once, or they're doing something that may or may not, maybe they've got really thick hair, it may or may not work on your hair texture. So you want to be very aware of it. The way that you can layer fine hair, and this is like so I'm actually creating an entire online course about this. And this is one of the things in the course. The reason that I'm approaching it in the format that I approach it, the reason that I use the sectioning patterns when I'm teaching you how to cut hair at home, teaching you how to do this on yourself, the reason I use the specific section patterns in the format that I use is because it limits your ability to make the mistakes and overlayer your hair, or take the layers too short, or do something that can cause some severe problems that I see in the salon all the time. And that's why we're taking that approach. But understanding that, hey, you can't pull your hair certain ways if you've got very fine hair or very thin hair, for instance, and just cut it off. It's not going to work the same way as somebody with thick hair. This is something I actually see a lot in men's cuts tutorials. I see a lot of guys with really thick hair doing clipper cuts, and they're like, oh yeah, just do this and it's really easy. Hey, that's great for thick hair. And many times that can look like it blends really well. But you do that same technique to somebody with fine hair, or especially blonde hair, and they have a huge problem ahead. They're going to see a huge line in their head that they're not going to be able to take out. It just means that textures are different and they show the cut differently. One little key insight I'll give you: if you are going to be cutting your hair at home and your hair is blonde, light colored, or very fine, one thing you want to make sure of is that you texturize those ends a little bit. One simple way that you can do that is when you're pulling it out, don't just cut your hair and snip it off. Kind of cut your hair, like if this makes sense to you, kind of use the shears or the scissors a little bit like a, not just quite so strong, right? So use them as a little bit like a feathering machine, where they're just kind of breaking those ends up. And all you're doing is just going through those ends and just breaking those ends up a little bit, so it's not just one clean cut. actually, or point cutting into it, which means that if your hair is like this, taking the shears and instead of cutting a blunt like this, cut into it like this, those little things will help any lines blend in if your hair is fine or blonde. So take that into consideration. But please understand that when you're watching videos like that, texture is a huge thing and it changes everything about the way it should be approached. I feel very strongly about the way that the techniques that we use in my online course that I'm creating, because it, like I said, does take those things into consideration. So it is the safest way to kind of address all of that stuff so that you have the least opportunity to make those mistakes. But they're very easy to make, and I understand how they would happen. Newbie right there getting phone calls in the middle of this. This is ridiculous. Come on now. Okay, so let's talk about coloring. Now, this is something that actually, again, happens in the salon a lot. We see this a lot, and I actually see stylists doing this. There's something that we at the salon refer to as hot roots. And if you're unfamiliar with what these are, it basically means that if you put color, let's say you color all of your hair from roots to ends, and you do this, maybe you're trying to cover gray, or maybe your hair is blonde and you want it brown, okay? And you do this every, let's say, month, because guess what? That hair grows out and you start to see those roots. And for a lot of people, those roots are really frustrating, and this is why they have to do it every month to cover up those roots. But what happens is many times people will put that color on the roots and then they pull it through the ends every single time. And maybe they pull it through the ends even for just a little bit, but they still do it every single time. What ends up happening over time as you do this, especially if your hair is longer and it's not being cut off a lot, right? So those ends are just kind of accumulating, if that makes sense. What happens is the hair at the ends and the mid shaft at the ends is continually getting covered again and again and again, and that color is pigmenting it and layering it and layering it and layering it, and what you end up with eventually is your ends looking much darker than your roots. And that's always kind of a worst case scenario. The better case scenario, if your roots are not going to match your ends, is to have your roots darker than your mid shaft and ends, because then it actually translates to looking like highlights. So there's another little tip there for you. If you want to look like you've got dimension in your hair, try just once taking your roots. If you do it all over color, try taking your roots, and this time, instead of doing your roots the same color you always do it, just go a little darker at the roots, like a shade darker, just a little bit darker. And what you'll find is, because you have, unless you've got like this much grow out, I'm talking like if you've got less than an inch of roots, okay? Now, if you do that, what you'll find is you'll see dimension in between the lighter ends, right, and the darker roots, and it starts creating this illusion of highlights. It's actually something I do in the salon, and it turns out really pretty. I've got clients that we just do that to, and they look like they've got highlights, and they haven't been doing highlights. It's really a solid way to bring this all together. Now, I want to talk real quickly as well about, this is actually one of the questions I got, is how to apply color to the back. And this would be really awkward if you don't have a three-way mirror or a mirror to hold up. I ideally say get a three-way mirror. Get one of the mirrors. There's some that you can find on Amazon even, where you can hang it on a wall or on a door, and you can move it around so that you can see all sides. It's so much easier to address the back. Now, in the course, we actually walk through, in the online course I'm creating, we actually walk through how to do highlights in the back and what to address and what not to address. That's a very long subject to try to talk about, so that'll be in the course for that reason. But one key is, if you're trying to use a bottle to apply the color, it can be harder to do actually in the back. It's easier to grab a bowl and stir the color up in that and use the brush. Then take sections in the back, called vertical sections, down like this, okay, versus across. And use the mirror to look in the back, section it off, and then paint it, and then take another section, move that to the side, and then paint it, take another section, and the key would be start in the center and move out to both sides, right? Now, also understand, though, that there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes in that also needs to be taken into consideration. If you're going to be doing your hair at home, especially if you're using permanent color, you want to pay attention, and especially if you're lightening your hair, this is a whole nother subject, but if you want to pay attention to what you're applying first and when you're applying it. You want to make sure that you're moving in a manner fast enough so that it gets all over your hair, but clean enough so that it's still clean sections, and also that you're applying it to the right areas kind of at the right time. Depositing color, that's not as big of a concern depending on what you're trying to achieve. If you're lightening your hair with a color, that is absolutely a concern, and you want to make sure that you're paying attention to where you're applying it first. There definitely is a process to that. Okay, so I wanted to get to some of your guys' questions here real quick. Hey, everybody. Hey, Harmony. Hey, Anita. Hello from Colorado. Man, I bet it's sunny there. I'm just kind of jealous about that. TMH says best styles for a large, tall, and wide forehead. I'll jump on that real quickly just because I just read it. Honestly, the length isn't what you have to worry about. The length is going to be fine. Figure out what length works best for the rest of your face shape. Bangs are going to be where it's at. Some people don't like to hear that, but even a curtain bang, right? Something softness that comes off like this that just kind of breaks that up. Something light, something off to the side. Doesn't have to be a strong bang, but basically just something that kind of softens that forehead is a really smart move. It also allows you, when you pull your hair back, to be able to have some softness around the face. So regardless of whether or not you're going to have it short or you're going to have it long, just some softness in there will blend with any length, and it'll help to add, again, some softness. I've said that word way too many times, but you get my point. Okay, so I want to dive into some questions that people already asked, and then I'll dive into these comments right here. Let's go through some of these questions that you guys had, because I want to make sure that I thank you, Linda. You're too much. I appreciate you so much. Thank you very much, Linda. You're amazing. Okay, folks. So one question is, Burn Jones McGee says, what is the best way to freshen my hair on days that you're not washing your hair? That's a great question. Here is the problem. You're probably not going to love the answer. And the simple answer is, if you're trying to freshen it up, what you're probably trying to do is remove oil. And that oil production is really going to, one, it's going to come right back. But the only real way to take that out, if you're not rinsing it out or washing it out, is going to be through a dry shampoo. There are some products, like even I have one called Revamp, that helps to take the oil feeling out of hair. But it's a bit of a process, and it's actually much harder to deal with than just using dry shampoo on it. It's more of something that you would use to as a styling aid to get more volume, and as well, it makes the hair feel less oily, versus it makes the hair feel less oily, and it also happens to style hair. That's kind of more of what you can use a dry shampoo for. To be completely honest, I've even had my own created, and it actually made the hair, like most, very white or whiter, and I didn't really like that, so I don't really use it a lot, and I don't promote it, I don't sell it. So it's hard to find one that doesn't kind of do that. I haven't seen one. If you know about it, comment below, let me know. I'd love to hear what you've got. But a dry shampoo is going to do a great job of soaking up that oil. And ultimately, I think it's going to be probably your best option if you're not going to rinse your hair or wash your hair. Teresa says, we live pretty rural, so getting to a salon is not always convenient. I can understand that. So most of the time, I trim my own hair and bangs. I don't do a terrible job at it. Nice. But I would like some pointers on shoulder length trims on straight hair with little to no layers. Your trimming bangs video, thanks, was spot on, and used your technique. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad that helped. I appreciate that. So how do we address shoulder length hair when we're trying to cut it at home and when there's not a lot of layering? So in the course, the funny thing was, one length hair in the course that we created, going through the process of working with our model and filming everything and trying to figure out how do we show the most appropriate way to get this line straight or whatever. I actually found that was one of the hardest videos that we had to create. It was definitely the hardest video that we had to create, because it's actually really hard to cut a straight line on a round surface, right? On their scalp is round. It's not flat or straight. So the fact that it's rounded like that means it's hard to get that hair to come back and actually look straight. What ends up happening is if you just pull it forward and cut it straight across like this, when you bring it around back, it's going to be a little bit of a V. Okay, so one way to really deal with that, and this is probably the most efficient way, is, and the best way that I would say, is grab a mirror, take the sides, comb them from behind the ear on both sides, pull this hair forward. Everything behind the ear is going to be separated. Everything in front of the ear is going to be separated. You're going to pull this hair down, comb it, look in the mirror, and snip it so that it is even. Okay? Then you're going to take it, comb it out to the side, and you're going to pull some hair from the side, and you're going to cut that so that it's even from the side. So you're taking a little bit of hair from the back and some in the front to kind of make that even. Then you're going to turn around in the mirror, and you're going to grab your other mirror. Ideally, you would have, again, a three-way mirror so that you have hands free. And you're legitimately going to just reach behind and cut that as straight as you can, point cutting into it, because it will actually soften that line a little bit. Now, if you don't care if it's rounded, that's if you want it straight across. If you don't care that it's rounded, then what you would do is just pull it forward and cut it. And quite honestly, if you do that right, you comb it down and you take a clean section, you comb it really clean, make sure that everything looks good and you snip it, it's going to be a little bit rounded at the back, but that's not really a huge deal. Then all you have to do is turn around and snip the little middle part that might seem a little bit too long or a little bit off, clean up anything that you see in the mirror, and you should be good. So that's the way that I would approach it, and that's basically the process that we take. It's a little bit more in-depth what we do in the course, but it's very similar to the process that we take in the course. That would just be a long time to try to explain that right now. Also, making sure, again, that your hair is not totally dry, especially if it's, well, in your case, it's not, but especially if I remember correctly, you said it wasn't thick. Okay, it's straight hair. So, I don't know. So if it's thick, you definitely want to have it wet, because it's going to be much harder to cut a clean line on thick hair. And it's just, if it's dry, it's just harder to manage to get in your hands and deal with. So wet is going to be the best option on that. Okay, so Linda says, what is the best drugstore hair color? How do you do the back of your head? We already talked about that. And what the dye is resistive. So we went through a lot of this, really trying to figure out, okay, what is the best? We did a lot of research kind of walking through these product lines, and here's our base answer on this that I think makes the most sense. Now, keep in mind what I did with those specific questions that you guys sent me that deal specifically with color is one of the things that I wanted to bring to the webinar, and one of the things that I wanted to bring to this course is it's important to me to bring you guys the absolute best knowledge, the best insight that I can bring you. And that many times doesn't mean me sitting in front of you talking to you about what I know. Many times that means recruiting what I believe to be the best people I've seen, because I want to give you guys the best, and I don't want to be sitting here arrogantly just saying, I know everything. I don't know everything. There are people out there that know more than I do in certain situations. So this is why I brought in who I believe to be one of the strongest colorists I have ever seen, one of the strongest colorists in my career that I've seen. She was the lead educator that headed up the advanced training program at my parents' salon, which was one of the top 0.5% of salons in the entire world for multiple years. And she taught me stuff. I mean, she's brilliant. So I brought her to this to head up this color portion because I wanted to nail it for you guys. And I want you guys to just be like, holy crap, head explode. Okay. And so I ran these questions by her because I wanted to get her opinion. And I also wanted to make sure that maybe I wasn't missing anything, or if there's anything that I could kind of pull from her. And all that stuff we basically agreed on. It's because we've worked together so much now. We agreed on, but when it comes to doing the research on specifically what drugstore products that we would recommend, we're working with L'Oreal, and in the course we talk about L'Oreal and we talk about Schwarzkopf. And the main reason for that is, and there's a lot of reasons, I'll be honest, but the main reason for that is those are two product lines that, one, live in both worlds. They have a commercial line and then they have a professional line. And because of that, they have an understanding about the way color needs to perform that I personally believe that not all color companies have. L'Oreal is one of the top companies in terms of education in salons, and Schwarzkopf, both of them are very, very, very into product knowledge, product testing, and at the end of the day, research and development. So those are the two lines that we recommend and that I would use, and this is what we're going to talk about in the course. Those are the lines that we recommend in the course. So those are the ones that I personally would tell you to look for. At the same time, though, I also believe it's important to do your own research. So we've done that research for you, but I also would want you to go out and look for yourself and see, well, what do we have? Is there a metallic dye here? Stay away from metallic dyes. They can be problematic, right? So certain things like that, just kind of look for it. But if you want a simple answer, I'll never do. What was that? I'll never do that again. That was terrible. I apologize. You can leave now if you want. I don't even blame you. Okay, so Yoli Rankin, I hope I didn't just destroy that. But she says, do you do Deanna's hair at home? Deanna's my wife. Do you cut it before like a date, or do you curl it before like a date? So curious. You guys want to learn a little secret? Okay, so this is mildly, not embarrassing, but this is probably going to let so many of you down. So many people think like, oh, you're married to a stylist, so you must have your hair done all the time. It's a bit like a mechanic always having a broken car. The last thing I want to do when I get home from a long day of doing hair is do hair. So I do cut her hair, but I'll be honest, I used her for a model on TV, on a spot I did on a television show here recently, a few weeks ago, and I cut one side of her hair. And legitimately, I didn't cut the other side because, there wasn't a lot of time. We were talking, we were doing other stuff, and so I kind of wanted to get through the segment, right, and make sure that we didn't miss things. So I did this side of her hair, forgot to do this. We still have, this has been 4 weeks. I think that was the segment before the last. So it was like 4 weeks ago or a little bit longer than that, maybe 5 weeks ago. Still haven't finished that other side. So needless to say, no, she does not get her hair curled before her date. I know. I probably lost so many value points there. I apologize, but yeah. That's the unsexy truth. She doesn't. I do color her hair though. And actually, I do cut her hair. And actually, I have Danielle color her hair. But that's mainly because I don't give her the salon service because we do it at home, right? And she wants to go to the salon, experience the salon service. You know how much, they're fun, right? It's part of you're just taking care of yourself, right? And spoiling yourself. So Danielle does her color so that she can feel like she actually gets a real salon service. Okay, so Madhavi, I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sure I did not. I apologize. She says, I am brunette going gray. I want to try purple shampoo, but scared of what the result would be on black hair with gray. That's a great question. So here's the deal. It's going to be okay. You can use it. It's not a problem. It's just there to cancel out some of the brassiness, to cut out some of the yellow. So I've actually seen very rare situations where if you shampoo your hair and you've got very bleach blonde hair, it's platinum blonde, and you shampoo it multiple times with purple shampoo over and over and over, it can take some of that purple hue to it. But more often than not, if you're shampooing it once or twice, you're just trying to cut some of that brassiness out. And I say once or twice, don't do it a bunch of times. Once or twice, you're doing that once or, 3 times a week or a couple times a week or whatever, you should be fine. I wouldn't worry about that leaving your hair purple at all. Karina asks, what do you do with blonde hair when you can't go to the salon to get roots done? Is there a relatively safe way to blend roots with lowlights or toner over the bleach blonde? I want to grow out my natural color and eventually just get some highlights. It's a really good question. There's a lot to unpack there. So first of all, in the course, we do actually go through how to do highlights and how to lighten your hair with lightener. And I will start this by saying there's a huge difference, guys, between doing color, depositing color on your hair, and lightening your hair with color. Lightening your hair with color that's really where the danger level starts to increase dramatically. There's so many factors that go to that. When you watch hair disasters online on YouTube, right? Hair disaster, that's typically where it stems from. If it's color, it's because they're trying to lighten their hair, and so many things can go wrong. But when it comes to masking those roots, there are ways that you can lighten it. And in fact, there are ways that you can lighten it relatively safely, depending. What I would say is, first things first, one way you can do lowlights. Lowlights are going to blend in. When I say lowlights, what I mean is basically you're taking your natural color, and I'm assuming this is what you meant by that. You're taking your natural color and you're actually weaving in some of your natural color up into the roots to cover up the roots versus weaving in the lighter tones to highlight the roots. If that's what you're doing, then yes, you can absolutely do that. You're depositing color. It's a non-issue. I wouldn't stress it. You just go in there, grab a few pieces, only do around your hairline if that's really a concern for you, right? So like your hairline and then your part line, that's really where you're going to see it. If you don't want to get too internal like in there, then just do it on those areas so it masks what people are seeing. And then just grab some pieces, pull some pieces out, and just color the very roots of those with the depositing color. If you're trying to highlight it, you can do the same thing. There are ways, but I would definitely do highlights. Do not try to put the color in all over the roots and lift all of the roots up. That's where the bigger concern is. And the reason I say that's a bigger concern is only because when you're doing highlights, you're dealing with less hair. So if something breaks off, part of a strand of hair breaks off, not a whole section of hair leaving you with a bald spot. Okay, so that would be the way I approach it. You absolutely can find the right highlighter, right? Meaning like bleach or high lift tint or whatever you're going to use, and then use that on just a few pieces just to break up that line a little bit. The much safer option is to do low lights because then you're just depositing the color. Okay, Joy says, what are hair masks for dry hair? Thanks in advance. So hair masks for dry hair, if I'm completely honest, I haven't used a lot of them. Typically, when we use masks at the salon, I'm using them on wet hair. So with that said, I wouldn't want to make a huge call on hair masks for dry hair specifically. And oh my gosh, I just let my dumb mind break into this. When she said dry hair, she meant moisture-less hair, drier hair. Okay, guys, see, this is the sadness that happens right here. I just totally read that and missed that completely. Wow. For drier hair, for hair that it lacks moisture. So in that scenario, there's a lot of masks for you actually that would work really well. There's so many wet lines out there. There's so many products to choose from. It's honestly tough to tell you one specific. We've got a few of them. I'm sorry, I'm looking over here because there's actually product over here. We have a few of them, and so I even have my own hair mask, and I wouldn't honestly say that it's better than other hair masks I've used. I think more often than not, the ones that I see, so L'Oreal Professional has some great ones. Bumble and Bumble had some great ones. I don't know if they do anymore. Tony & Guy has some. Honestly, though, the majority that I see that I've used are all pretty similar. They all do a pretty solid job. I would just stay to the more reputable professional brands in that. But to be completely honest, to push that kind of to the side a little bit, before I would even get into masks, and this is what I would tell clients as well, I would first look at what's causing the dryness, because many times using a mask too often can also dry your hair out. And if you're trying to create moisture in a scenario where there isn't necessarily moisture needed, right? Or I shouldn't say that. Maybe moisture is being stripped from the hair because of your shampoo that you're using too often, or even because of the conditioner that you're using is too deep and you're using that too often. I would first try to address the other things that you're doing to determine where that moisture where that lack of moisture is coming from, why it's dry. If that's a natural thing, your hair's just always been dry, right? It just tends to be dry and you just feel like, hey, I want to add some extra moisture to it. Then that's one thing. So take that into consideration. If that's the scenario, then yeah, most masks look for L'Oreal Professional Series Expert or L'Oreal Professional line in general. Their Series Expert line is solid. I would look at that. They've got some good masks. Start there. That would be like the easiest place that I would tell you, just begin there. But also pay attention to the other things, because it could be something that has nothing to do with actual dryness in your hair. It could be something else that you're doing that's actually causing the dryness, like a shampoo being too strong. So you want to use gentle shampoo every day or every time you shampoo, maybe a stripping shampoo once a week or once every few times to strip out the oil, but not every day. And don't be using deep conditioners every day. I've said it 100 times, not that you've heard it, but I've said it 100 times and I'll always stay to that. Deep conditioners every day will dry your hair out. It's just crazy, but it's like overwatering a plant. Okay, I can't believe that I totally misinterpreted what you said. Wow. I'm not the smartest person. I'm not going to lie there. Okay, so let's see. Doc Ann, I believe. I know I always see your name on here, but I never know how to pronounce it, so I apologize. I've got thick, naturally curly, wavy hair that I wear in a bob that's about mid-neck length, and I use a flat iron on it. My stylist has to thin it a lot for me to be able to wear it short and not look like a big puffball. Been there, seen that for sure. Anyway, my last few haircuts, the back isn't laying right, so it's driving me bonkers. Instead of laying smooth and straight, smooth and curving under, it keeps curving to the side. Okay, I don't know for sure without seeing it, but what it could be is curly hair, or if you've got wave or curly hair, it has a curl pattern, and that means that it grows out of your scalp and it does this. Okay, now where you cut it on that curl pattern can determine how it lays. If it's curling like this and I cut it right here, then it's going to lay like this. If I cut it right over here, it's going to lay like this, right? And what that can mean is that could be why part of that is flipping out or curling out or whatever. Now, another reason that could be, and again, it's really hard to speculate without seeing it, is it may need to be texturized a little bit. And when I say texturized, understand that there's a very big difference between thinning hair, over-texturizing, and texturizing. A great way to get hair to lay down is actually texturizing just the very ends. When I say the very ends, I mean like if this is a comb and this is your hair, just the very, very tips of that, just a little bit to kind of break those ends up, that can actually get hair to lay down a little bit. But more importantly, it blends hair in really well. I honestly would say that I texturize about 99% of my clients or my cuts, literally. And if it's done right, honestly, it's most of the time, it works out incredible for most people. I guess is what I'm getting at. 100% of the time it works out incredible, but it works out incredible for most scenarios. Very few scenarios I've ever seen where we shouldn't be texturizing. Even if it's scary, it's probably because it's been done wrong. But in that scenario, texturizing those ends a little bit could actually help that to lay down and lay a little bit smoother. But again, unfortunately, it's one of those scenarios where I'd really have to see what's causing it to determine the best way to tell you to address it. Okay, so Kanjari says, thank you, Justin. On dry days, my hair is beautiful and I have good hair days, but on damp, rainy, dreary days, like we have in the Pacific Northwest quite often, they become frizzy. I use Garnier Fructis anti-frizz before blow. Now? Let me know if you guys can hear me. Let me check this. Is that better? Can you hear me now? I'll wait for you guys to let me know. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it now. We can hear it? Thumbs up. You got me? Okay, perfect. Fantastic. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on with this. Today's just one of those days, I guess. So I appreciate your guys' patience with this. Okay, so back to what I was talking about. I'm going to repeat that last one just so that you guys can hear it in case you didn't hear that sound. As far as, let's see, the actual question was, on dry days, my hair is beautiful and I have good hair days, but on damp, rainy, dreary days, it becomes frizzy. I use Garnier Fructis anti-frizz before I blow dry it, but is there anything else that you can do? So what I was saying is, unfortunately, what happens is when you dry your hair, it locks it into whatever place that it's in. So if you can dry it smooth, it's going to stay smooth. And as long as you keep it dry, it's going to stay smooth. The one thing you want to make sure of is that it's totally dry before you're done drying it. Many times it's easy to feel like something's hot and therefore it's dry, not realizing that it's actually still got a little bit of dampness. And when that cools down, it actually, you feel the dampness, and then it starts to revert back to having some of that frizz that you had recently thought was smoothed out because you thought it was dry. But if you actually get it dry, great, and it stays smooth, and then you go outside in the rain, or if it's dreary, and it starts to get frizzy again, unfortunately, that's part of having texture in your hair. The minute it goes back to being wet or having any moisture, it's going to revert back to its natural state, which in this case is a little bit of frizziness. Now, the one thing that may be causing that is you want to be where if you've got curl or wave, then it probably comes, well, then it does come with an inherent amount of frizz to begin with. Okay, so that may be what it is. If your hair is just straight, I'll tell you now, it shouldn't be frizzy. Most of the time, if it's just straight, it's not frizz. More often than not, if it's frizzy, that actually is caused by a shampoo drying your hair out or something causing that frizziness. Now, one culprit of this is actually Pantene Pro V. A lot of that product in there I've seen many times where it will actually dry hair out and create this little fuzziness, and you'll look on straight hair and see this little bit of fuzzy frizziness that once you stop using this shampoo and you start moving into other shampoos, over time it actually calms down and then you don't have that problem again. But if that isn't, I haven't seen any products that you could put over your hair that did a good job really of calming down the frizz in the rain, that protected it from that also weren't rather heavy and would end up weighing your hair down. It's kind of the lesser of those two evils. You could try some sprays like hairsprays, but unfortunately, even with the hairsprays, then you run the risk of getting your hair, yes, I sprayed it and now it's staying frizzy. It's got a little bit of barrier there. It's staying less frizzy. But the problem is it has no movement. And then that is its own problem. And that may or may not be a larger problem or a lesser problem than the frizz. So you want to kind of weigh those concerns out. But I would definitely just consider making sure that you try to keep it as dry as possible, and then make sure that it's dry before you leave the house, and then try to figure out where's the frizz coming from, what's causing it. If you can do that, we've got a lot of room to work with there. Okay, so Nancy says, I am transitioning, I think, haven't made that yet, I gotcha, to gray hair, and I want to know if women with warm skin tones, and medium brown natural hair look good with silver. I'm getting a lot of negative feedback about my choice that gray hair looks much better with cool tone, with cool tone complexions. So in this scenario, it really depends on the tones of gray. I wouldn't blanket statement anything like that. So I would not say if you have warm skin, you can't wear gray, or vice versa. You have to have cool skin tones to wear gray hair. I just don't subscribe to that. I think the biggest thing is using the dimension that you can put in hair. So a while back I did a video about aging, and one of the things that I was talking about was the importance of color, and people were freaking out. Well, you don't have color. Okay, I'm not saying everybody has to do color. What I'm saying is there's certain situations where actually doing some color, even on gray hair, can really enhance the overall gray. And in your situation, if you're concerned about it, really what you're concerned about is it washing you out. That's typically what happens. And in that scenario, what the concern is that it's so much light that it ends up just drawing too much color out of your skin. But one way to combat that is simply putting in some of the pepper, right? Adding back in a little bit of pepper. So if you look at my hair, you can see there's these little dark lines in here, right? It's gonna do two things. One, it's gonna add more dimension to the overall color and more color to my face. But two, it's gonna make the white pieces pop more. If your hair goes very light, like very white gray, then, and you feel like, man, this is washing me out too much, go back in and add some lowlights of just your natural. It wouldn't even be natural because I wouldn't do brown. I would actually go almost black. I know it sounds dramatic, but when you do really small, thin little pieces, it goes very far. Like, it doesn't take a lot to go a long way when you're doing a process like that. But just that little bit gives the overall dimension and the overall texture that makes the white pieces pop, makes the dark pieces look like a little bit of shadowing, right, and give it some dimension, and brings the tone back to your face. And you would be shocked with the amount of color that brings back to your skin tone. I've got clients that literally before and after, if you covered up their face and just looked at their hair, you'd be like, okay, I can see a difference. There's some dark in there, not a huge difference. But if I took the before and after and all you saw was their face, you'd be like, holy geez, look at the difference. And she looks so drawn out over here, but over here she looks like she's got rich color and she's glowing. It's amazing. It makes a huge impact. So that's the way that I would approach that concern for sure. Okay, and I used to color my hair with L'Oreal. So H. Olson says, I used to color my hair with L'Oreal Superior Preference, and it came with this good quality conditioner that I used every time I washed my hair. Since I changed to more natural hair coloring product with peroxide instead of ammonia, I don't have this conditioner unless I buy out of the box, unless she buys the other box. Do you have any conditioner suggestions that can get that you can get locally in your city of 350,000? That's a great question. So, I mean, honestly, I would say Amazon. Ordering it online is probably going to be the way to go. I have no idea what you have available, so it's really hard to say what would be the best conditioner. Again, conditioners are kind of a tough one because there's a ton of good ones out there. There's a ton of great masks, great deep conditioners. The thing about them is you just want to be careful about how often you're using them, and more so, I guess, than which ones you're using. When it comes to like store-bought, like drugstore bought shampoos and conditioners, I have a tendency to shy away from it. And honestly, guys, one thing I hope you know about me by now, if you've followed me at all or if you watch any of my videos, is that I'm not here to just sell you products. If I honestly think something's great, if I can find something that's $5 and it's amazing, I'm gonna tell you about it. I don't care if it's my line or not my line. I've never been one to just promote what I think is good because I think it's expensive or I'm trying to make $1 on it. It has nothing to do with what I tell you. If you hear me tell you something if I'm endorsing something, it's 100% because I believe in it, or I would never say a word about it because I need you to trust me. It's so important. Trust is so important that in my line of work and what I do, that without it, I'm worthless. So trust this. When I look at most store-bought shampoos, the concern is that many times what I see as a result of them is damaging results. I don't see a lot of good come out of them. So I lean over to more professional style products. Now there's some professional style products out there that you can get at Nordstrom Rack that are great products that I would be 100% behind, and you can find them for a good deal. So that would be one option. But when it comes to drugstore stuff, I say, be a little careful of that. Now, once you put that out of the road and you start looking at other lines, now you're starting to talk about a lot of pretty similar products. Like, they're all gonna be pretty good. If I grabbed you my Intense Conditioner, when it comes to styling aids, they're a little bit different. But when it comes to shampoos, I've got Fresh Start shampoo, which is a stripping shampoo. I've got Intense Conditioner, which is an intense conditioner. I've got a bunch of different products. And guess what? I also have Hair Story, which is a great shampoo and conditioner line here. I've got L'Oreal stuff that I sell. There's a lot of really good ones. And would I say that mine's better than the other ones? No. I don't think that they're better than mine either. There's certain attributes I like about them depending on the use. But more often than not, the deep conditioners, I like all of them. They all function. They all work. The fact of the matter is I've gotten good results from all of them. So that would be the first thing I would say is go online. Again, Series Expert from L'Oreal is pretty solid. Look at their stuff because I think you would be really happy with it. And it's easily accessible is why I say look at it. Also, pay attention to if you just switch up color lines and you're seeing more damage in your hair, it may not be the conditioner. It may be that the product line is damaging your hair. And actually, one thing that I have seen with natural product lines is some are great, but there's a reason that I, in our online course, and that Danielle and I are talking about L'Oreal and Schwarzkopf. And honestly, there's a lot of times when people come in, the crazy stories that I hear, like, I'm not saying all lines do this, so I don't want to throw this out there. I'm just saying there's been crazy stories like where things go, hair turned green, and I have no idea why I put this on the hair and it turned totally green. Those kinds of stories many times stem from the all-natural products. I'm not saying they're terrible, you shouldn't use them. I'm just saying those are the scenarios where I see that. And for me then, I can't take that risk in the salon. I have to know that what I'm gonna do is gonna turn out the way I need it to turn out, or else I could find myself in a world of problems, right? And I don't have those worries. So that's kind of why we lean to those, and that's why in the course for Hair at Home, we're talking about Schwarzkopf and L'Oreal because we know what to expect from them and we can trust them, and we know that they're going to be the least amount of damage to your hair. They're going to be the most gentle, obviously, on your hair, and they're going to give you great results at the same time. So I hope that helped a little bit. Okay, and Lynn says, I had very short hair. Now I have a mop on my head because it's thick and curly. Should I only use a clipper to cut it myself? No. I would definitely not say you should only use a clipper. It depends on how short it is. If it's so short that you can't use your hands and shears, then you'd use a clipper. But otherwise, in our course, like the online course I'm creating, I go this long on the side, quite short. I do a haircut quite short, or I don't do it. My client does it. Does a haircut on herself that's quite short, and we didn't use clippers at all. It isn't until I get into like my length of hair, really, where I start talking to people about, okay, now you need to move into clippers because scissor over comb on yourself is definitely definitely a challenge. So no, you don't only have to use clippers, but if you find clippers to be easy, stick with them. Definitely use them. Okay, so Arnica says, please tell me the haircuts that suit round and chubby face. Love from India. Well, thank you for joining me from India. I appreciate that. So much easier than me explaining it to here. There's a few things you want to pay attention to. If your face is round, it's usually something that we want to watch the fullness of the side. So keeping that length a little bit longer or creating more length on top to help elongate that, that's a big deal. Making sure that you don't have too much volume on the sides any volume you have on the sides is going to create the illusion of more fullness. So you want to pay attention to not having too much volume on the sides as well. You also want to make sure that you're not using a bang or wearing a bang that's too strong. So curtain bangs or some softness, that's fine. That can work really well as long as the length and the height to offset that. But having a strong straight bang, right, and having a length into here would be very problematic. I did just do a video all about that. It's my most recent video, so if you check that out, it's got some deeper information with some visuals that might be a little bit more helpful for you on that. So definitely check that out. Okay, Simple and Sophisticated says, I'm looking for a toner to blur my grays. Not many, just a few scattered here and there. My hair is light brown. Thank you for your help. Videos are the best. You're too nice, way too nice. I very much appreciate that. So as far as toners go, first of all, toners are not considered colors, they're toners. So there's a difference between semi-permanent colors and toners. Toners are really there to tone after you lighten hair, you don't get it to the right tone you want, and they're toner. They're a lot safer, they're a lot easier to deal with, but they don't deposit as much. So you do want to be aware of that. You may be able to get away with a toner. It may be that your gray hairs, you don't have very many of them, so it could work, but it may be that they're resistant enough and it's not quite enough to color them, and you end up with some of the underlying pigment that you see. So in color, every color has an underlying pigment. What that means is, let's say you pick brown. Well, that brown isn't just going to be brown. It's going to be either red underlying pigment, right? Or a cooler underlying pigment. Maybe it's violet, right? Whatever that is. And at the end of the day, if you put that on hair and it doesn't take all the way, you might see a diluted version of the color, which will look maybe red, right? So think of it like watercolor, right? When you've got a glass of water and you put a couple squirts of watercolor in it, even if it's a red watercolor, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden this cup is now red. It could be pink. And that's what maybe what you see if it's not strong enough to cover those grays. So you do want to be kind of aware of that. But with that said, if you're talking about which individual product to use, I would look actually for a semi-permanent color, and then just find a color that is either the color that your natural color is, or even a shade darker, and just work it through those areas. The reason I say a shade darker, not a lot, but a little bit, or you could actually, you know what, I lied. You could go lighter too with it. In fact, if you want it to look like you've got a little bit of highlights, lighter might be a good idea for you. Just a little bit, because semi-permanent color doesn't have the ability to lift hair color, natural hair color. It can only deposit on it. It just sits on the outer layer and just sits there. So it's going to rinse out faster. It's going to fade quicker, but it's also not going to be permanently damaging to your hair in terms of tone. So one way would just be going over it a little bit with that, let it sit on there, and you're just going to see a little bit lighter versions on those gray pieces, but they won't be gray, and it'll give you some nice little highlights. Or you find a color that matches it exactly, or you do a darker color just to kind of get those gray pieces to match. But if you do darker, then make sure that it's not a lot darker, very, very, very minutely darker, because that will make your overall hair look darker. So be aware of that as well. Let's see. And Gina says, I just started using Kristen S products on my wavy short hair. My hair looks great, but I feel like a lot of my hair is falling out in the shower. Do you know anything about this product? Should the falling out worry me, or should I assume it's part of the natural shedding process or clearing out with the new product? First of all, in 25 years of doing hair, I've never heard of a product causing a normal amount of fallout. Okay? What I mean by that is, if you just started using any product that's not like a chemical product, right? Like any sort of shampoo or conditioner, and your hair started falling out, and it was a result of that product, there's no normal amount. That shouldn't happen, period. Like that is not a normal thing. I would definitely stop using that. Something's going on. But with that said, I would also want to be very aware of, is that product actually causing your hair to fall out, or is something else causing it? Did something else happen right when that happens? Now, remember that we're going to lose about 100 hairs a day. That's pretty average. So if you actually took something to put over your drain and actually saw how many, and literally counted them, how many hairs, and I've done that before because you had to, it was dumb. But you counted them, and you're losing some hair, right? And then you stop using the product, you count them the next day, and you've lost much less. Then you would know that, okay, something's not right? Or maybe it might take like a week. Who knows what would be causing it? But it might take like a week, and then you start noticing that you're losing less. Well, then we know something's going on with this product. There's no normal amount though. That would make me concerned. It also though, there's so many things that can cause your hair to fall out. Stress is a major, obviously, and I know that's not the great answer, but stress is a major proponent of making hair fall out, right? I've seen some crazy things in the salon with stress and how quickly hair can fall out. So if there's something realistically, like it could be that, hey, I just started using this, but also we had a major thing going on with COVID where everybody got shut down. If that heavily impacted your life and you got really stressed out a couple months ago or a few months ago, and then a month ago you started using this product and now you're noticing a lot of hair falling out, it may have nothing to do with the product. It may be the stress actually from the pandemic affecting your life. And you're just seeing that now, and it just so happens that in your mind, the catalyst was this product because that's when you started using it, right? Now, if it actually is the product, stop using the product. Just stop it. I don't honestly know a lot about the product, so I don't want to talk about it like I know about it because I don't. That's just not fair. But I can't say that I've never seen a product that had a normal amount of shedding to it, so I would definitely be concerned about that. So I hope that helps a little bit. I'm going to jump through some of these comments here real quickly so I can hit them because you guys have been so great to me in asking all of these. And then I'm going to let you guys go here so you can go on to the rest of your day. Let's see here. Okay. Going to go through down here. Hi, Melanie. Melanie White says, hey, it's Melanie White from that small town in Idaho. I love it. Great to see you here. Let's see. DB from Olympia, Washington says, not too fine or thin hair, just impossible to do anything with. That can definitely happen. The one thing I find, just so you guys know, if you have fine or thin hair, honestly, as much as some people don't like to hear this, and I can understand why, product is king. It just is. I mean, that's what I use in the salon. If you come to me in the salon and you've got really thin, fine hair, I'm going to tell you we're going to have to use some product if you want it to create the volume that you're looking for it to create. It's just part of that process. If there is a way that we can not use product and just get your hair to react and stay and hold, I'm all over it. I'm all about it. It's going to need, obviously, the right cut, but it also needs that foundation of product and the right kind of product to get the volume in the shape that you're looking for. It's just kind of one of those things. Round face. Pam Martinez says, I got a round face, thin, fine hair. Do you recommend a pixie cut? Absolutely. You can definitely do pixies. So I don't talk a lot about short hair on these recent videos. And I need to do a video all about short hair. In fact, I'm going to do that. That's going to be one thing that I want to talk about. Because you can absolutely I've got a lot of clients with round faces that you do pixies on. It's just a matter of, again, where you create in that volume. You want to make sure that you don't create too much volume in the sides, because even if it's not down by the cheeks, it'll still add width, right? So there needs to be enough volume in the top. You can always have some softness to break up the face right through here in the front, and making sure that you're creating the volume up here. So you want to create the volume up here so it accentuates cheek structure, not cheeks. And that can very simply be done on a pixie cut just by having it tighter through here and having a little bit more volume as you get up the head, so that it's not just like this, it's more shaped like that. So a little bit of volume in the right areas does a worthwhile work. Let's see. Okay, Susan Taylor says, when salons do open, how do I keep my face mask on while being cut? That is a fantastic question, actually, and that's a very relevant question to what we're going to be facing here very soon. So here's what I tell clients, and keep in mind that I haven't been allowed to open my salon yet. We open on next Monday. So I haven't had a lot of time to work around this, but in working with the face mask and kind of thinking, how does this all going to play out? I would say what you do is on the right side, you pull this over your ear and you hold it against your face, and then they can cut around this. Then you put it back, move to the other side, bring this forward, hold it down, and they cut around it. You bring it back. Yeah, that would be the way that I'm probably going to have my clients approach it. With that said, though, it won't be necessary for every haircut. It's really going to be more on the shorter cuts that it comes into play. And honestly, I haven't seen that it really is an issue yet. We really have to kind of play with it a little bit more and see. But that would be one approach that you could definitely take to it. Okay, Melanie White says, I want to go gray and silver. I have dyed my hair red for 20 years. It's grown out for a year now. Is there going to be a long time? Is it going to be a long time? Or do many visit? Is it going to be a long time to do, or many visits to the salon? It depends on how long your hair is to begin with. So here's the thing about red. Red is an odd it's an odd color, not odd in look, but odd in chemical makeup. If you actually look at it under a microscope, the actual molecules are different shapes than other hair color molecules. And so what ends up happening is, think of it kind of like put the round hole. Think of it like a beehive, and you're trying to get these things to go inside the beehive and stay inside the beehive, right? Well, all the beehive holes are circles, but you've got this big, thick square that you're trying to cram into that thing. That's essentially a red molecule. So what ends up happening is the red molecules that get crammed in, that actually make their way into the cuticle, they'll stay in because they don't want to come out, because it's too hard to get them to come out. However, most of them don't make it through that hole, so it coats the outside of your hair. And that's why many times if you dye your hair red, you've probably noticed that it rinses out quite a bit at first, and it seems to fade very quickly. But then also when you try to pull that color out with bleach, you're going to find that it's much harder to get out of the hair, and it's a much more aggressive color to get out. And that's why. So it depends on how you're going to approach removing it. There are ways to get it out, and there are ways to go gray immediately. I did a whole video on going gray, so you want to check that out because it's got a little bit of insight into the processes and options for you. But red hair, especially if you've been doing it for a long time, and especially if your hair is long, and especially if you've been going over the ends a lot and redepositing that could be something you want to pay attention to. It could be a little bit more problematic in trying to pull that color out, so just be aware of that. If you're going to do that, make sure you find somebody that really knows the craft of going gray with color in a day-to-day basis, like immediately, not over time. Make sure you find somebody that really knows what they're doing. It's a very kind of dangerous move, but it can be great. But there are definitely a lot of options for you, so it may not be a long process at all, depending on what option you choose. Watch that video. It'll explain it much better than I can explain it here. Hey, Dawn. She says, hi, Justin, from sunny California. I'm so jealous. Harmony says, hey, Toronto, Alberta here. Canada's somewhere that I actually want to go very soon, so maybe I'll see you up there. Angel says, hi, Justin, is it harmful to put hair oil on before using a straight iron? Should I wait until after I dry it so I don't fry it? Thanks. Love your content. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So the simple answer is no, it's not harmful at all, actually. So there's a lot of products that you put on before you straight iron your hair that were actually considered protectants, heat protectants. Oil can actually serve that purpose as well. So I wouldn't worry about it if your hair is too wet. When you put it in, then it's just going to dilute the product, so I would pay attention to that. But otherwise, I wouldn't be stressed out about it at all. One key thing to realize, too, when you're using a flat irons, many times, like if you put product in it, like I'll see them at the salon, and they smoke, right? It looks like they're smoking because you see the steam coming off of it. If there's any moisture in your hair or any product in your hair, many times it'll steam. If you smell burning hair, you have a problem. That's when you know there's a problem. But if you don't smell burning hair, don't stress about it too much. Doesn't mean that it can't be damaging. It's just to say your hair's not on fire, I promise. Okay. And let's see. Linda Howard says, what hairspray can I use on fine, short length, not a lot of hair that doesn't get real stiff but will hold? So I've got one that's, you guys, this is killing me, honestly. So I've got some products that I'm going to be doing videos about here that I want to show you guys because I honestly believe that you will love it. Again, revert back to my whole spiel about how I don't just sell my own products because I'm not just here to sell stuff. But with that said, I've got a couple that honestly you will love, and I've got that product for you. Unfortunately, right now, I can't talk about them, and I'm trying not to. I'm holding myself back, really, talk about them too much because I don't have a process in place for fulfillment to really get these products out there. And I've had so many issues with USPS lately of sending products back, packages open that never got to the person, or they show up open, taking forever. It's just been a bit of a nightmare, and it doesn't work well for you guys. It's not fair to you guys to have to deal with that. So that, unfortunately, the one that I have that I would tell you, I can't tell you about yet, but it's great, and I promise it's here. There is one from L'Oreal that I actually link in my description of all my videos. It's linked below, that I do love. It's a little bit stronger, but not too bad. It comes out very, very soft. So one thing that you could do would be put a little bit of oil in your hair beforehand and then spray it. That'll break down the spray a little bit. Be very, 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 very ginger with the oil. Not a lot. A little bit goes a very long way in that scenario. Or just use less. But the one I really want to tell you about, if I tell you about it, you're going to want it. And then it just sounds stupid to say, here it is, you can't have it. I apologize. But the one that's in my description actually does work pretty well. And you might really like that one. I actually love that one, but I love the other one a little bit more. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Okay, Linda, you actually wrote, "Is Justin the greatest guy or what?" And I legitimately read that as, "Is Justin the greasiest?" I didn't see who wrote it. I said, "Is Justin the greasiest guy or what?" And I was like, well, I do have oil on my forehead. Is that bad? That's kind of rude, though. Come on, guys. So thank you very much. I saw that. You're way too nice. Okay, so is it me or does hair feel heavier or dirtier when using dry shampoo? Absolutely. So dry shampoo essentially creates texture in the hair, but it also uses it to soak up the oil. It'll definitely feel a little bit gummier and just gunkier, but it depends on how much you're using and how oily your hair is to begin with. So it can definitely feel, in some cases, heavier. In some cases, it actually feels like it's got a little bit more volume. So a lot of people love it. Some people absolutely hate it. Let's see. Let's see. Can you please tell us how to deal with frizzy hair for people who live in high humidity states like Texas? I think we already went over that before. It's basically you got to keep it. The sun sucks, but you got to keep it dry. And I know that moisture from scalp, especially if it's hot out, is going to have a tendency to be problematic for that. But there's just no products that I've really seen that will do the job. You got to make sure it's dry. Flat iron, because actually flat ironing, that heat locking in that straightness will help. It actually is more effective than, say, a round brush. But once you've done that and you use the product, at the end of the day, it very well is going to get a little bit of that reverted back to its natural state of frizz if it gets any moisture, and that includes moisture from sweating. So unfortunately, it's not quite that easy. I'm sorry. I bought blue shampoo to cancel out brassiness. No. It definitely cancels out brassiness. Just don't use it a ton. Okay, let's scroll down here a little bit so I can hit some of these. And let's see. Have you had anyone that's micro needling to help their hair grow? Anyone who has been successful? It's a great question, Melanie. So I haven't had anybody using micro needling to help their hair grow. So I don't know if that's something that I would recommend doing. I've heard of people doing it, and I've had friends that have talked about it, but I have not personally seen anybody do it and seen results. So unfortunately, I guess I don't really have anything that I would feel confident in saying to you about that. I would want it to be true. Okay, and let's go back here. And I think we're getting to, about to the end. And yes, Linda, fat hair is one of the products that I cannot wait to talk about. Okay, so guys, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna sign off here in just a second, but I do want to just share this one little thing with you. So first of all, if you're considering doing your hair at home, make sure there's a link below. If you have not already registered for the webinar, the live webinar, I'm gonna do all about diving a little bit deeper into topics about how to do your hair at home, mistakes that people make, things to watch out for, all of that good stuff. Click on that link and register for that. That will be July 1. July 1st is the day that goes live. I'm super excited to bring it to you guys. I cannot wait. Now, fat hair. There's been a lot of questions about fat hair. I've talked about it in another video, and I get a lot of emails about it. There's a lot of people that want it, and I totally understand. And I honestly feel terrible that I can't get it to you right now. There's been so much confusion and frustration with the whole trying to get everything shipped. It is something that I'm very much working on, and I will bring it out. I do want to do a video on it. I will tell you this. If you've got fine, thinner hair, and you want volume with little texture, you are going to flip for fat hair. And please understand, I'm not just saying that. It is the product, but the thing of the matter is I've got to show you in a video how to use it, because if you use it the way that a normal product is used, you won't like it. You need to actually use enough to get the texture and the movement out of it. And you need to learn the process on how to break it down so that it feels still soft in the hair, but it gives you a ton of volume. It's hands down, for the last 25 years that we have had it, the #1 seller in the salon. I have people that legitimately buy it by the dozen because they cannot fathom being without it. I love it, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys and show you all the ins and outs of it, because it's your game. It is. I promise you. I think there's a few people have had it that are actually part of this community, so maybe they can give some feedback on that. But I'm telling you, I'm really excited to give that to you. Okay, you guys, thanks again for hanging out. I really appreciate your time. I know this is a very long little conversation that we had, so I hope you found some value in it. If you did, feel free, maybe hit that subscribe button. Every Tuesday I come out with much shorter videos that are much more entertaining, but equally as informative, if not more. So check those out. And otherwise, again, if you have not registered for the Home Hair Masterclass webinar, do that. Link is in the description. You guys, thank you. I appreciate you. Linda, I appreciate your support. Thank you very much for that super chat. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll see you very soon. Bye, everybody.